I need some traction. You need some traction.
Thank you all. I know it's almost cocktail hour. I'm ready for a drink. I'm sure many of you are as well. I work on the human side of the business. I call it analog growth hacking because, well, I talk to humans. Everything you do digitally is designed, in my opinion, to create that human opportunity to have a conversation. And when Lloyd asked me to do this talk, he titled it Art and Science of Closing a Deal. I thought it was kind of funny because I didn't actually, well, I don't believe in closing. I don't think it's a thing. I think closing is transactional. I think we should be helping people. I don't think we should be closing people. I think closing is a tactic, a manipulation, a tool to get us what we want, but it doesn't help us give others what they want. Whereas when we're helping, we're fully immersed in an experience of getting people what they want, and closing then becomes a byproduct of what we do, not an actual action in and of itself. So I'm here to talk about the conversation. At GrowthX, we have a $50 million seed stage fund. We invest in early stage companies across a wide variety of products and markets and verticals. And we focus on companies we think we can help grow exponentially. Unlike other accelerators, which are focused on helping companies develop product and raise money, ours is focused on helping companies market product and make money. So we're really focused on helping companies that have a limited amount of time and resources to get to whatever that next market milestone is for them. And so to that point, what we find is the area of the funnel, the phase of market development, where companies have the greatest opportunity and also the greatest risk, is at that moment of the initial qualifying conversation. Everything up until that point is not selling, it's marketing, whether it's through email or anywhere else, and that's fine. But ultimately, now is the opportunity to find out whether or not what you have is a good fit for somebody else and whether or not you should continue to try and work together. So I'm here to talk about how to structure a conversation in such a way that you can efficiently figure out whether or not what you do is a good fit for the people that you're talking to and whether or not it's a good idea for them and you to work together and go down that path. Because it's all about traction effort delta. Most amount of money with the least amount of work to get from point A to point B. And you need to be efficient about that. So in order to do that, the science of this, the data is you first have to understand why people buy. In business, not consumers, we're talking business to business in the analog world, people buy in a complex sale is defined by a sale that has 2 or more people involved in the decision-making process. So that there has to be logic and justification to make that purchasing decision for one of 4 reasons. To make money, to save money, to create a competitive advantage, and to stay out of prison. Compliance, risk. Think about the things you have to legally buy. Think about things like insurance or compliance tools like an applicant tracking system because you might get audited by the government for bad hiring practices. So for one or more of those 4 reasons is why a business buys. Okay? Now we have to understand how they buy and what process they go through. And the process they go through is the same process every human goes through. First, we have to recognize a need, right? Oh shit, my phone died, or it's broken. I need a new phone. I've acknowledged and recognized that I now have a need, right? Now, I need to get a new phone. What do? I go evaluate my options. Do I want to go Samsung? Do I want to go Apple? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? Every decision I made prior informs the future decision. I go through that process of evaluating my options. And then I resolve my concerns, or I hope to resolve them. And by the way, I don't believe in objections and objection handling. That connotes confrontation. I believe that people have genuine concerns. And if you're fortunate enough to surface those concerns, and you're lucky enough for them to share those with you, you need to acknowledge them, you need to address them, and you need to do everything you can to resolve them. And if you do, then, once again, being part of that fully immersed experience and trying to be helpful to people, closing becomes a byproduct. Okay? What we learn from the data in this, though, is that people don't buy if they don't recognize a need. Show of hands, how many of us have had something in a pipeline that's had 80% close probability tied to it, and then all of a sudden people go dark and you can't explain why? Right? You spent 6 months on it, you spent hundreds of hours, and now they're gone. Well, somewhere along the line, somebody did not recognize a need. How do I know this? It's not my data. Dr. Neil Rackham, author of Spin Selling, which is one of the, in my opinion, the best book and methodology used because it works across every product, market, and vertical, conducted 35,000 sales conversations over a 10-year period and used that data to develop this pattern of why and how people buy. And what he learned was that the best and most successful organizations spend the majority of their time on the first thing here, the recognition of needs, helping people understand whether or not they do have a need, helping them uncover that need. And when you go slow to go fast, you actually get where you want to go. But first you have to understand if people actually have a need. So how do we uncover that need, right? This is where the art and the science come together, because the science is the data tells us that there's a process by which people buy, there's reasons that they buy, and then the art is how we navigate that process and how we behave in that process. Are we helpful? Are we genuinely involved in fully trying to understand whether or not we're a fit? Okay? So when you're entering that conversation, do not enter that conversation to sell. You enter that conversation to determine fit. And this begins with hypothesizing value and tying that value back to the things on that slide two slides ago. Does what you do, not what you do, but what you do for people, tie to one of these four items? If it doesn't, you've got a market fit problem. If it does and you're not communicating that, you have a messaging problem, and that's fine. So now you hypothesize value based on what I do and what I understand about your company, Mr. Customer. I think I can help you make money, save money, stay out of prison, or create a competitive advantage, or all four, or two or three of those four. And I'd love to have a conversation to see if that in fact is the case. That's all I want to do. Give me 15 minutes of your time. I don't want to hear a product demo. Product demos suck. Why? Because they're about your product. Don't tell me what you do. Tell me what you do for me. That's what people care about. Okay? And don't use scripts. Scripts are one way. This is a framework. It's a dynamic conversation. It's an interaction between multiple people. And the idea, again, is to determine whether or not you should be spending that time together, because you don't want to spend 6 months with somebody for them to go dark. You can't afford it, especially at the seed stage. Okay? And what's the purpose of all of this? It's to get to the truth. At GrowthX, our job is to help our companies get to the truth faster, whatever that truth is. You may not like it, but at least it's the truth. And then you have an opportunity to pivot or proceed. Because there's only one of you. There's hundreds or thousands of customers. And I understand when you're going to raise money from investors, you have to tell them that everybody is your customer. But then you forget to come back down to earth and focus on who's Mr. Right now, not Mr. Right. Who's going to help me get from this lily pad to the next lily pad? All right? You have to do that. You have to be focused on that. And that's a discipline. That's the art. The science will give you the discipline. Right? We spend so much time using technology to collect data when the reality is that all the data we ever need is in this conversation. It's talking to another human. And if you create a safe environment for them to share with you what you really want to know, you'll get everything you need. What you should be super efficient at is getting to this conversation. And then when you have this conversation, you need to use it to drive an outcome for both parties. Okay? So how do we set the tone with that? We develop our value hypotheses. What do I think I can do for you? We define that value, and then we ask the question collectively, can we work together? So when you open that call, you literally ask, hey, thanks for the time today. How much time do we have, by the way? 30 minutes? Wonderful. What would you like to get out of today's conversation? Shut up and listen. Once they're done, and you've responded to any questions or concerns they might have about that or what their expectations are, because you have to manage expectations. I use this formula called F equals E minus R. Frustration equals expectations minus results. So if people come into a conversation with a certain expectation and you don't meet that expectation, they get frustrated. And you get stack ranked out of their world. That may be good, that may not be good, we don't know. But at least you got to give yourself an opportunity to uncover the truth. Okay? Then you share with them what you hope to get out of the conversation. this is great. Thanks for taking the time. I'd love to understand if whether or not what I think is valuable would also be valuable to you. Okay? Now you start the conversational framework. You investigate, you interview. It's been said that journalists are the best sales professionals. How do I know? Because I said it. Why do you think that is? Their job is to uncover the truth in the most objective way possible. So how do you get there? So back to Rackham and spin selling, there's a process, SPIN. Situation, problem, implication, and need. You ask questions in that order. So how do you do business today relative to the thing that you think you can solve? What are the problems associated with that? What's the impact on your business? In other words, how do you quantify it? Now you're tying back to that value prop and how you hypothesize that value. And then, is there any resulting need as a part of that? And by the way, you don't answer these questions. They do. Product demos push people into a corner. You're supposed to put your arm around them and walk together to determine whether or not there really is a need. You need to be curious. You need to be helpful. You need to be supportive. And you need to be open and honest. I don't know if we can help you. I'd love to find out if that's the case. Let's have a conversation and see if whether or not we can. Make sense? So you follow that process. And you'll notice that I never talked about a specific product or market. This works everywhere. How do you do business today? What are the problems associated with it? What's the impact financially, economically, or risk-wise? Back to those 4 reasons. And then what's the resulting need, if any? And they have to explicitly state to you that that is in fact the deal, that they have that problem, that yes, this is how they do business, yes, these problems need to be solved, yes, they have this impact on me, and yes, I have a need. And if they do it, now you can have a demo. And when you have a demo, you can tailor the demo for resonance based on what you just learned. Remember when you said that this is how you did it and that was the problem? Let me just show you that. Right? Does that make sense to you? Pause, listen, ask questions. Right? Make it a conversation. The last thing you do in any of these situations is present your product. Understand whether or not there's a need first. And then, at the end, always try and get a commitment to a next step, no matter how small that commitment is. You agree to a follow-on conversation, or you agree that this might not be the right time. Okay? Because the second best answer in sales is no. Wouldn't you like to know now, as opposed to 6 months from now, that this wasn't the right thing for you to be chasing at this stage in your company? How much easier do you think your life would be? Okay. So, closing thoughts. Closing is a bad word. Helping is a good word. Your success, you have to enter these conversations recognizing that your success comes from helping others be successful. So understand their business, understand what they currently do, the problems associated with it, the impact, and the resulting need, and whether or not you can help them. And it's okay if it's not a fit right now. It's nothing personal. It's just business. Thank you.
I need some traction. You need some traction.